This episode is for Friday, November 20th, 2015.
2015.
Mockingjay Day. Woo-hoo.
I'm jealous.
Welcome, Crater fans. I'm your host, Josh Owens.
I'm your co-host, Ben Strahan.
Welcome. Well, I got if you're watching, I got my old school media shirt on.
Oh, right on.
Back before Blaze died.
Oh,
wait. Sorry.
What are we going to be talking about today, by the way?
Today, we're talking about Velocity dying.
Oh.
Is Iron Router dead?
Oh.
Phoenix as a meteor alternative.
What? My head just spun off, man. What?
Yeah. The cost of frameworks and a rebuttal, a little bonus. 2 posts and 1 discussion. And
the death of Blaze.
The death of Blaze.
There's a lot of death going on. This should have been our Halloween.
Ben. That was Bush League. You didn't link up the RIP Blaze in the show notes there.
I just was shocked that it wasn't in your show notes initially, so I just
I was just going through Crater and trying to get it all in a certain order, and Penny wanted to play War, so we were
just tell the truth. You're really disconnected from.
I was playing cards and building a list over here. I'm like, if I don't get it to Ben, he's gonna be mad at me.
That's right. I'm such a diva.
So yes, yeah. This is definitely like the death of all things edition or something.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh goodness. Okay, so yeah, we'll just dive in. It's been a while, right? I mean, we didn't do it last week, and maybe it wouldn't all feel piled up into one show had we done it last week. But Zolvio announced that they're not going to be working on Velocity anymore, and it turns out they were the only guys working on Velocity still. So at this point,
so Velocity is the test runner for Meteor.
Yeah. And they've done really interesting work, and they've been focusing on building a great testing environment. And I think it really boiled down to reading between the lines here. It boiled down to the fact that it looks like MDG didn't really want to accept the pull request, or I don't know exactly what happened there, but basically a pull request is set out there since May 9th, and they've been trying to maintain compatibility going forward, but it's all fallen on Jonas and Sam. And I think it's becoming too costly for them, and so they just had to kind of say we can't do it anymore.
Yeah, they had to make a tough decision. I mean, I know that they're involved in their own startup.
Yeah,
and gosh, it takes up someone's life. Trying to break a startup into a profitable business.
Yeah,
and so that makes total sense on their part.
Yeah,
what I'm shocked at is the title, which is saying handing Velocity back to MDG.
Well,
and then what was MDG's response?
They didn't have an official response.
That is, yeah.
Right. And so the interesting thing is, if you know where to look, you can find a response. I don't think it's super official, but from what I'm hearing out of Customer Appreciation Day at Meteor, they're perhaps working on well, they've said in other places that they're also working on getting module support into Meteor, and theoretically that should make using standard testing tools from the Node environment maybe a little bit easier. So, but at the end of the day, you still have things like end-to-end testing or integration level testing that you want to do, and there's still going to have to be some work done there.
So people thought that the testing story with Meteor was weak. Now it just got a whole lot weaker.
Right. I mean, it kind of did, right?
It did.
Here's my problem with this. Don't ask the community to do stuff and then expect them to do something and then don't support them. They actually came out and said it was the official testing framework of Meteor, and then
yeah, that's right.
it looks like they really weren't working with the team. So I mean, that's just, I don't know. It's another instance of managing open source is hard, and I think that's really what this boils down to.
Yeah, and I think there is going to be an answer coming in the future, like you speculated, where Meteor is going to be shedding its MVP skin of like having so many things done in house, and they need to become a profitable company. So they're going to be looking for community at large to fill some of the gaps that was taking up a lot of MDG's time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've always maintained, I don't understand how you could expect Galaxy to take off when you're trying to do all the stuff that they're doing, like building that business in and of itself is going to be a hard thing for them to do, because they're going to be hiring support people and DevOps people, and like that's so far out the norm of what they've done for the past 2 years. Like that's going to be really, really tough for them. And I kind of think that's what we're seeing. Like they're still hiring developers and doing things, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, from the very beginning, anyone who ran a business and then saw that in the past and then saw that MDG came onto the scene, they're a for-profit company. They didn't separate their open source stuff into a non-for-profit company. It's still part of the for-profit. Yeah. You always knew that there was something coming down the line. They have to be in the black, and they're keeping this stuff in house. So I always knew something was coming. And so velocity is dropped. MDG's not picking it up.
So I will say, the one response we did get in the Meteor guides area or the GitHub repo in the issues discussion, Tom started talking about testing, and there was just a bunch of back and forth, and Sashko essentially said, there's nothing's going to happen on that front.
Yeah.
So,
well, nothing's going to happen on velocity specifically.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
but testing's not like totally ignored by MDG.
Right. Right. Yeah. But I mean, that's, their response to this article essentially is that they're not going to be doing anything with velocity. But that's not to say, Sam and Jonas still want to make sure that Chimp, which is the basis of Meteor Cucumber, is still going to function, and they're trying to make sure that it functions with Jasmine as well. And he's got some really interesting stuff up his sleeve. He was showing me some ideas he's got. He wants to do almost like an end-to-end testing with Jasmine, but it's got a really interesting reuse case spin on it. So, hopefully he can reveal that in much greater detail soon. But it looks really interesting too. So that doesn't mean you can't test. It just means I think it'll change how you test and how you run tests and that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And hold tight, community at large. There's going to be some changes coming with testing.
Yeah, I also think that this means with the next release of Meteor, like 1.3, velocity's highly likely to break. So it'll continue to work for now, but as soon as a release comes out, they're not maintaining that huge backported patch anymore. So
yeah, beware when you say Meteor update.
Yes.
Cool.
Tell us about the dead routers.
The dead routers. So there's been a long talk for months now that's like, flow router is the way to go.
That's just you, really, right? That's just your opinion.
I guess that's just my opinion. I guess that's just my opinion.
No, I'm just kidding. Sashko said something too.
That was the big hint.
Yeah.
They hinted that routing was going to come into core. And then everyone's like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And Sashko's like, start using flow router. And there you go. Like, it was like, okay. Now, will routing come into core? I don't know. But people really took that. Yeah, I don't think so either. But people really took that and started using flow router. And so new projects came along. And like even on this show, we've talked about this before. And I said, there's more instances of Iron Router out in the wild right now. But I was always under the impression that new projects,
Right.
there would be more people using Flow Router with new projects.
Yeah.
And then Vinley came out from France, the guy who runs Fastosphere,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he came out with his awesome Medium post about, is Iron Router really dead? And
Yeah.
he had
Well,
stats to back it up. It was like,
what's interesting to me is like we didn't talk about Fastosphere got upgraded.
mhm,
I don't think we ever talked about that on the show,
no.
which I wanted to, but we just had so much to talk about lately. And that was awesome. And I was kind of looking over it and poking around, and that's when I noticed he actually had stats for like all time downloads and like per week and per month downloads. And that's when I started looking and thinking, oh my gosh, like Iron Router is still like an order of magnitude bigger in downloads per week than Flow Router.
Yeah, yeah, you could look at that, but later on, so Iron Router's not dead. It
No.
has like 7 times more downloads.
Right.
But if you look at the trend line, Iron Router's going on a huge nosedive.
Mm-hmm.
So
But the interesting thing is you don't see, like, maybe just the size of the graph right now is throwing it off, but I don't, in comparison, you don't see a huge upswing in Flow Router either.
that's what I was going to say. Iron Router is going down. Flow Router is not going up.
Right.
I mean, it is, but not at the same velocity that Iron Router is going down.
Right.
And so I'm like, there's just not a lot more Meteor apps coming out. So
Maybe you're right.
obviously, like there should be a consistent number of growth of apps, right?
Well, here's the thing. So the interesting piece here is this maybe signals that we have people on older versions of Meteor that aren't updating, and their version of Iron Router is fine, and they're not pulling a new version because they're not updating.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a possibility. Maybe they're locked into a version, and it's already on their machine. So these stats come, like when you type Meteor add package name, that's when these stats occur, like they're created. Because your machine goes out and it sends, and actually like Meteor's doing some creepy stuff. They actually have the ID of the app that's checking in, so they can tell which app is pulling in the package. And then yeah, most people don't know that.
I'm gonna make some dirty named apps now.
I don't know how that works exactly, but I think it's just a string and a file. Just in your .meteor folder, there's like an ID file in there. And so I think they track those stats that way. And this again, I've got a number of apps that just sit there on my machine that aren't being updated and haven't been touched in a long time, and that very well could be it. I mean, we're still on 1.1 for one of my client projects, so
yeah,
that could be it too.
Yeah, and it's not the full picture. Like I'm sure there's a small amount of people, maybe super small, maybe it's huge, that is using React Router.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, we do have this big split that's starting to happen now that we have Angular and React in the framework as an option. So could be that too.
So at the end of the day, what should this like say like, hey, should we like advocate for a certain router right now? I honestly don't think people should be using Iron Router.
I don't either. So the reason I would say that is because it's not being actively maintained, and so I think it starts to fall into that same kind of, like, he hasn't come out and said he's not actively maintaining it, but it
Right.
definitely falls into that category, like Velocity, where a new version of Meteor could potentially break it, and it may be a little while before we see an update to it, if ever, because I just think Chris doesn't seem to be participating in the Meteor community anymore, from what I can tell.
Well,
maybe I'm wrong.
Again, another guy with a startup
Mm-hmm.
trying to make some money, trying to make a living. you know.
and it's really hard to do a major open source project. Like I
Hmm.
was on that project for maybe a week as a potential maintainer, and I was at Differential, and we were trying to figure out like, can we throw some weight at this thing and maybe help out? And no, like it was just too much.
We did the same like talk at OK Grow.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, do we want to pick this up? Before Flow Router really was something big.
yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, so I would say moving forward, wink, wink, people should be using React Router. I think you might be thinking differently.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, I think Flow Router's a perfectly fine choice. I think Aaron Noda will continue to maintain it. I'm curious. Like he's using React, but I think maybe he's using Flow Router, and that's definitely a choice because the renderer is separated from the router, and so you just have to make sure the renderer does the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Definitely an option. But Flow Router has more of Sashko's blessing, right?
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
wait. So my question would be, because I haven't even looked at React Router, is that something that's coming from outside of Meteor?
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So
It's a
that's an
component.
actual. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting given our upcoming discussion.
Yes. Anyway, before we move on, we talked about Chris having a startup and Sam having a startup. I think
Yeah.
we should give those guys a shout out because they're awesome.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, well, obviously, I mentioned Zolvio,
Mhm.
and I think he's working on a project called Simeon. I think it's
Yes.
Simeon.io.
Yep.
And Chris, yeah, I guess it's a startup. I mean, he's just doing training videos, which I think most
Mhm.
people probably know about. But
Invented mine.
yeah,
Yeah. Check those guys out. Simeon is like a collaborative.
you can make this so long if you go through all these.
Simeon's cool, man. I think it should get some
It's
more exposure.
interesting. Yeah, sure.
A collaborative way to like share your tests with your
Yeah,
team.
yeah,
Go check it out.
indeed.
All right. So Phoenix as a
Phoenix.
Meteor alternative.
Yes, and I'll just say I posted something on Crater as well, and some interesting stuff happened. We talked about Done.js, and uh, you know the
It
the
does.
the author got mentioned in a tweet, and he listened to the episode, and I really liked having that interaction that
Mhm.
happened outside of the Meteor community.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he
Because it's
pointed,
done JS. It's JS.
yeah, totally.
That's just what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're saying.
Is this Phoenix JS?
No,
Oh,
no.
what? What?
Yeah, sorry, Ben.
What? Just
So
for the record,
it it
I
made
want
me
people to know
it made
I
me
have no part of this.
yeah, uh-huh. Yeah. All right. So,
Josh is like,
you're killing me. Shut up.
and you're a dick.
Let me finish. Yeah, so it got me thinking like where's Crater at? Like I liked that interaction happening and I wanted to see more of it. And I think that Meteor's definitely opened itself up to try and play nicely with the rest of the community slowly. I think we're getting there. Maybe with npm3 support and module support and webpack support, we'll actually get all the way there. I don't know. That'll be interesting. Which they're all working on, by the way.
Yes.
But I got up. Gosh, what day did the Blaze thing come out? Was that
Wasn't it
the
like 3 days ago?
Wednesday
Wednesday?
maybe? I got up that morning and just I don't know. I was feeling like you know I something needed to change. So I changed the tagline to on Crater to like building JavaScript apps. But then I realized like, ooh, that's that's probably a big area to talk about. And I think the thing that we're all really interested in, and the thing we like Meteor for, is the fact that we're doing real-time stuff. We're building web and mobile apps using real-time stuff. So I changed that tagline. And that seems to coincide with the fact that a lot of people in Meteor Club are talking about Elixir and Phoenix. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Just in case JavaScript apps was too big of a subject.
Yeah.
We brought Elixir in.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so here's the thing. A lot of
Erlang in the house.
A lot of people are using React with Phoenix, and they offer their own WebSocket implementation called Channels. And but the thing with Erlang, which is the underlying VM that runs Elixir, and Phoenix is written in Elixir, is that you get that, like, it's built for scalability. You can like really easily just say, I need to run a bunch of these, I assume, processes. I haven't even gotten that deep in it, but and it should be able to handle that for you. Like, it was built for that specifically, and the language was built. This is like what your telcos like build stuff with. So like the reliability of it has to be way high, because people get really pissed off when their phones don't work.
Yeah.
So, it was interesting to me. And I will say there's a lot of back and forth in here talking about Elixir and Phoenix, and it looks interesting to me. If I had time to play with it, I might.
Yeah, we have some like Elixir like moles in our chat room, to say the least. And even this week there was an announcement that like a cutting edge brand new startup that started and is launched in production with Meteor has moved to Phoenix already.
Yeah.
Like, people are moving out of Meteor.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
into Phoenix, or at least one person is so far.
Yeah. People are going to change their tech choices. I think that's fine.
I could see people starting off with Meteor, and then they have to, like, they're growing. They have growth. So they need to, like, start pulling things out, putting new things in, and, like, really customizing their stack for their situation. But to move from one framework to another, and having it stay, like, solid on, like what they start off with originally, usually.
Yeah, Meteor did it. I mean, they didn't go too far. They went to the mean stack. So obviously they were still in the JS space, but
yeah, we've had the same conversation with people that start off with Meteor, and then they moved to like Rails, maybe, if they were less technical co-founders and stuff. And we were like, oh, poo-poo on that. But I have to say, it's a different story. I'm not comparing Phoenix and Elixir to Rails. In all intents and purposes, really neat. It's a really neat choice. It actually sounds.
I mean, one of the hardest things to do is scale those WebSocket connections on a small server, and I think that's he who does that best wins, or she who does that best wins.
Couple things, like, you lose isomorphic code, right?
You do, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
It's a trade-off, right? But at the same time, you go from like this single-threaded event loop processor to like a completely different kind of mindset and framework that is supposed to handle the scaling a lot better.
Yeah.
I
feel unsettled on how we're ending this.
Yeah, so all I'll say is that you should go at least read 25% of this thread. Let's see. Does it tell me how many are in here response wise? If I go to the bottom, maybe.
It's a long thread.
It's super long, and as with any, I think, Meteor forum thread, they eventually like die down into like terribly hard to read things because they get so long. And
110 replies.
Yeah, 111 is what I'm showing. Oh yeah, 110
including
replies.
The original.
Yeah, you're better at math than me. Yeah. So I mean, it's worth at least paying attention to. A lot of good links in here, a lot of good discussion. I mean, if you're looking for something and you're concerned about scalability, it's probably worth looking at.
Now, if you're a startup, like what is the going rate or the availability of Elixir developers and Erlang developers?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
I'll say I know in Cincinnati, I know just about the same amount of both right now. So
Oh,
probably along the same lines. I think it's like anything. The one thing that I think was super specialized for a long time was Objective C developers, but I don't think that's or I'm guessing Elixir developers are not pulling in 2x what most developers are. Like Objective C did there for a while.
I wonder if it's hard to find them though.
Mm.
Popularity of JavaScript's through the roof, and people can like jump onto Meteor. Knowing JavaScript but not knowing anything about Meteor and still like produce really rapidly in a project.
Yeah. I won't disagree with that.
Yeah. A lot of things go away. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
My kids are probably streaming Netflix right now.
Yeah.
Eating up my bandwidth.
All right. So let's move on.
Yes. The cost of frameworks. Wow. Let me scroll up to the top of this very long article. This is written by, oh, wait a minute. I have to scroll to the bottom to get his name. Not at the top. It's at the bottom.
I think it's at the bottom.
Paul. Hello, my name is Paul. He works at Google on the Chrome developer relations team. And so he wrote this article, The Cost of Frameworks. And basically, it's an argument for not using a framework, but writing everything out from scratch using JavaScript. But he does a really awesome job laying out both sides of the argument, so much so that I had to, like, while I was reviewing it, I had to ask Josh, like, what side is this guy coming from? But it's there's actually a lot of stuff to talk about in this article.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So the benefits of using a framework and the benefits of not using it, or the cost of that. And I think he sums it up pretty well. And I want to get right into one thing. Big, bold letters, developer ergonomics versus user needs. And that was the cornerstone of this argument. Was, hey, do we use a tool because it's fast to develop in? We could leverage other packages that are already made. We can get going faster. But at the other hand, you're going to be sacrificing stuff for the user because you're going to be using a framework.
But what kind of stuff are you sacrificing?
Yeah, a framework is built for like a lot of different use cases in mind. So you're going to have a big code base, a fat code base. And in the case of Meteor, like much of that code is being downloaded at the initial load of every client.
Yeah. And to be fair, like he was just comparing the client side of things. So Meteor was not mentioned in here, but he talked about Polymer and Angular and React and Ember and regular JavaScript. And the piece that I found super interesting about this is like some of these things, like the time, like he measured the size of the library to download and like the time to actually get Bootstrap. Did he talk about
time to interactive? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so he shows like the JS was requested, it arrives, the data is requested, the data arrives, and then the page is like ready to go. And some of these took like Ember took over 2 seconds. Actually, they were, if you look at this list, React with JSX not transformed and Ember were like the big losers in the benchmark. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And then vanilla at the bottom.
I also think it's a little I'd really be curious to see. I'll have to see if I can maybe run these myself, but I'd be curious to see Angular 2 in its current version. Like, what's that bootstrap time look like? Because I have a feeling like that's probably faster as well.
Yeah, and I think he summed it up correctly. Like this is the argument to have. Not so much like, oh, what framework is better or what framework's faster. Like
Hmm.
that's not what so many people tackle it at. But
Hmm.
he really pinned it against user experience, and pinned it against just regular JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript,
Yeah. So I mean,
which is
that's his take, right? Is that
the real argument. That's the real conversation right there.
the
If
overhead's
you
too high, so you should just go write plain old JavaScript apps.
possibly, yeah, it's like you are going to be sacrificing uh, a perfect user experience to get to use this framework.
Right. And so I like his argument I think has some really interesting merit to it. Like you can go look at stats from Amazon and they talk about how they've been able to measure like 100 100 milliseconds in latency translates directly to like X amount of dollar loss. And so they're absolutely always trying to figure out how to deliver JavaScript or the HTML as fast as they can to that browser because they don't want to lose the sale.
Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about, again, I really think this the next question is right after the what's more important, users or developer experience. Hand in hand with that is, well, what stage is my business at?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. And I think that's where the rebuttal comes in here. And Tom Dale's not my most favorite JavaScript developer in the world. He's been very anti-Meteor, but I think I really, really agree with him here that frameworks make it easier to build things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an extra visitor in here.
Yes.
Go get something. Guess my wife left. That was my youngest daughter. So he starts arguing about like are frameworks worth it, and here's a key line. He says, in my experience, it boils down to app developers overwhelmingly use frameworks because they have to support code for years. DevRel, I guess that's developer relation people, love small libraries, vanilla.js, because they don't have to support big code bases for years and can quickly bang out demos with the latest and greatest.
Mm.
And that's interesting, and I think we'll segue into that more. But you know, I definitely think that he says here in here, what is the execution time of real world apps of approximately similar complexity? And maybe apps built with frameworks are still slower, but my hypothesis is that for any apps of any larger amount of complexity, the ones that start off vanilla will accrete their own Franken framework that performs similarly to, if not worse than, an off-the-shelf framework like he says
As it grows.
Ember or Angular, but you can insert anything there. And
I think so too, because you're going to have a different perspective of the problem that you're trying to solve from day
well,
one, you're starting to build, and then like day
here's
600.
here's the thing for me. Like if I decide to go, I mean, if we rely on a library, an open source library that is on npm for doing mongo stuff, and an option changed, and performance got worse with mongo queries and memory, and a bunch of people were having trouble scaling their Meteor apps, and Meteor brought in some experts, and they took a look at it, and they're like, oh, here's your problem. You didn't notice that this library got tweaked in this way, and you didn't change your arguments, and boom, you've got bad performance all of a sudden. And so they were able to put out that fix in whenever the story was. Like you could probably look it up, but and I think to me that's the power of a framework. And if you're on your own just using the library and you didn't notice, which can be a very common mistake, you're just kind of stuck there looking at the bad performance, and really you don't like. Maybe you can find someone to call on. Maybe you call Strong Loop like Meteor did and bring them in to help, but chances are you may not be able to afford them. So I don't know. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm pro framework.
Yeah.
Once I become a unicorn, then I'll be rolling my own.
Yeah. Nice.
Until then,
that's the last stage of unicorn, is like rolling your own framework.
Yeah. Well, the last stage is open sourcing your own framework and having the world adopt it. That's the last stage of unicorn.
No, the last stage of unicorn is just
that we built.
People just like making it rain on you.
Making it rain?
Yeah.
You're a unicorn. All right.
You are a snowflake. So I think the other interesting thing, you and I were kind of talking back and forth about this, is he ends with, he doesn't really think that slow performance on mobile devices should really be the problem, and that a lot of frameworks are optimizing for slowest browser, which he says is Chrome on Android, which is a little shot there too, I think. And he says hardware manufacturers are making CPUs faster. Browser vendors are making their JavaScript engines faster. And he says, here's hoping Chrome catches up to Safari soon. Framework authors are optimizing their code for slow browsers. And frameworks are working on reducing startup costs via strategies like dead code elimination and server-side rendering. So, I think there's a lot of interesting things happen, and he's very true. This is very much like a bandwidth and a hardware issue, and they can probably get some gains out of making browsers faster with each iteration of an OS release. But if nothing else, like, it's just inherently going to get faster as we get more bandwidth and more powerful CPUs.
Here's the thing: the world's moving to mobile. 2/3 of the world is going to get on the internet soon. What's that? What's that look? What type of speed of? What is their LTE speed going to be with the Facebook balloons or whatever in the air? And what kind of devices are they going to be using? When you trade in your phone at Sprint, T-Mobile, or whatnot, where's that phone going? It's probably stockpiling up, going over to Africa or something like that, right? So like they got like a bunch of like Android 2s, 2.0 or something like that. I mean, so when the 2/3 of the world comes online, what is that going to look like? That's when we could like fully say, okay, this is what we need to build for. We can assume, it's going to be faster, better. That's the future. But
I mean, if that were true, I would think that would already be happening to some extent, and I'm not sure it is. And I also think there's very few globally reached like applications, in my opinion.
That's what I was going to say next. Is like I think as developers, we don't have a world view so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely isolated to my view in Ohio or the U.S. or North America.
I think that's definitely going to change come the future.
Yeah.
So there is a couple things at play right now.
All right, let's move on.
All right, next one.
Because I think this next one's going to be pretty big. So, in case you missed it, you're living under a rock. The CEO of
what's his name again?
God, what it was? No, don't do that. That was a bad reference to a stupid joke I made. I shouldn't have made. Yeah. So you totally threw my mojo off, Ben.
I'm sorry, bro.
You're having fun here.
That's my bad.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I really want the article though. Gosh, you should have linked it, Ben.
Oh, I'll send it to you right now. I got it.
Right,
next steps. How do I even do this chat thing?
Yeah, that's all right. Crater was faster.
Got it.
Crater was faster than Ben trying to paste a link. Take that, Google developer relation guy, Paul.
He's gonna be like, Crater what? Crater what?
Yeah. Yeah, so Jeff came out with an announcement, and it was called Next Steps on Blaze in the View Layer. And, I think many of us have been kind of scratching our head and wondering what's going to happen with Blaze. We feel like they're not working on it. They've come out and said they're not working on it. We don't there's definitely performance problems inherent in Blaze when you hit a certain kind of size of an application. Things definitely start to get slower, and we need some fixes, huh?
Blaze is only used in Meteor apps.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yep.
they tried an experiment where they spun out Blaze to be its own library and came with Tracker and all that kind of stuff, and it I'd say it failed pretty bad. I went out the other day.
Spacebar's, right?
Huh?
I think that was before Spacebar's, right?
No, it was around the time of 1.0. I was out there for like an August dev shop, and they had just announced it at HTML5 DevConf. And as is typically like hard to do, they I don't think they've fully committed to it to like make it an open source thing, and never really found an audience for it either. So if you go look, I don't think that website's not being maintained, and like they started a Google group which looks like moth and like dust balls, tumbleweeds rolling around. So I mean, like, React definitely has a much bigger community behind it as far as a front end framework goes. I mean, Angular does too.
Angular does too. Yep.
Angular's like the 800-pound gorilla here, right? But React comes from the backing of Facebook as well, and so there's some interesting stuff going here, and I think that it's really really hard to expect that MDG could even compete on that level, and so.
And it takes man hours. MDG is like very limited on the engineering.
Well, it's not even just the engineering man hours, right? It's like the open source support and trying to it's a whole separate marketing job. Basically, they'd have to take what they did for Meteor and kind of replicate it on a smaller level for Blaze, and they'd be building a whole team around Blaze.
Yeah. And we had a feeling this was coming when they added really easy support for Angular and React. And we even talked about all this stuff. We had Yuri on the Meteor Club and hints at this all the time. And so for Meteor, you had the choice: Angular, React, or Blaze. And essentially, then with those three, like they would need to keep Blaze at like a competitive level as React and Angular if they were going to move forward.
Right. Which, I mean, they're just not doing.
It's a huge effort. Yeah, it's a huge effort to like ask that.
And they're not even putting in a minimal effort here, in my opinion.
Well, again, and they're a startup, and so they got their happy path. And I think then this is like this. This is why Jeff wrote this forum post. Is like, hey, I'm laying the cards out. I have to communicate this. Probably this is hopefully a leaf being turned of like them having better communication. Maybe like this is coming from the top down. This is coming from the CEO.
So here's what I'll say. Okay, number one, they did it slightly wrong in my opinion. They should have had a post on the blog that said, here's our announcement. Meteor 1.3 is coming. We're shooting for a quarter range, right? Just give us like Q1 2016. We're going to try to come out with Meteor 1.3. Here's the things it's going to include. Here's actually some GitHub issues where you can follow along, and if you care about this thing, you can comment here. I think that would have been a great post. And everyone would have been like, yeah, cheering it on. And then boom, hit them with this, and everyone would have been like, okay.
Gosh.
I don't know. Maybe that's real troll
right there. Yeah.
But I still think like you would have had a lot more goodwill coming into this post than they had, in my opinion.
I think yeah, if you spun it with some positive news, then yeah, you're right. I think Yeah, you're right. You're dead right, bro.
I mean, I like to think about marketing from time to time, and it's just a marketing move. You can
Yeah.
say it one way or the other, but one way makes everyone feel a little bit better, I think.
So tell us what they're doing. So what did Jeff actually announce?
So what he announced is that they're starting to investigate what Blaze 2 would look like, and that they want to be able to build off of React and the community there and do something interesting. And so they want to have Blaze 2, which will be a much tighter integration of templates and tracker and React output, versus what React offers today. So it sounds like basically Blaze 2 will be kind of like a React transpiler almost, where it'll
Mm.
take what you're building in a template and kind of put it together into the correct React syntax and spit that out. And I think there's a lot of interesting things that come along here, right? They have a
Yeah.
big component ecosystem that you'll be able to tap into, which that runs off npm, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I hear in 1.3 we're going to get like an upgraded npm setup, so
Mm-hmm.
definitely playing hand in
There's
hand
a lot
there.
of, so Blaze is like a cornerstone of Meteor.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely a cornerstone of the packages that are available on Atmosphere.
Yes, it is, and I
What,
pointed
what
this out.
percentage of Atmosphere is Blaze related?
Oh,
You know,
it's got to be a huge astronomical number. And I asked
yeah.
Vinay if he could maybe pull these
Uh,
numbers up.
you did, yes.
I did, but he couldn't figure out how to do it. He said he didn't have that kind of data on it. But I mean, if nothing else, like I'd love to see, like just search for the word blaze. Like I came up with 100 results. He caps the results at that. So I bet there's a lot there that are related to blaze. And
Oh,
if there's an enterprising individual, you could just pull in all the packages and look in the package.js for the word blaze, and I think that would also help you figure that out. But we're so okay. I think that was fine, and the community responded, and a lot of people, you can see right away, someone's like, well, what's that look like for my code? And then someone else said, yeah, like that sounds great. And then Aaron Notice said, what about Blaze React? Like, let's not start from nothing. And la di
you
da,
mean,
you go, huh?
is that what he said? Sideburns? Was he?
Yeah, Sideburns has been renamed to Blaze React.
Oh, has it? Whoops.
Yeah.
I'm behind on the times.
Get with it, man. Get with it. No, that just happened this week, I think. But then Evan Yu jumps in and he says, hey, I'm going to be the guy doing the investigative work. I'm probably building something here. So, he kind of outlined some things. And one of the things that really struck me here is that, however, we've come to realize, like he starts talking about sideburns or React Blaze or whatever you call it. That while Blaze is super easy to pick up, there's some inherent design decisions that make your UI harder to debug and maintain when the scale of your project grows, which some people have run into. I
Mm-hmm.
think, and he quotes someone as to some of the problems. So instead of keeping the old API and treating React as a low-level implementation deal, we want to embrace the strength of React, the component model, and its related JavaScript API, and providing on top of it what people like about Blaze, which is the templating and the reactivity. And then just asked for what's this look like, or what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? So he's just asking some questions, trying to get some responses. And I think that riled up people a little bit more because it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like it's going to be pretty incompatible.
Yeah.
And then Sashko came along, and this is the one that really kind of struck a chord with me. I think 100% foolproof way to go would be to just start using React now. The Blaze 2 thing, I use the air quotes because he put quotes around this thing, is mostly for people who don't want to deal with the details of React and its JSX syntax. But if it works for you, then I'd say that's the way to go. But I think it's deeper than that, right? Like we've got this whole get meteor data, and like the way that functions, you have to like really start thinking differently about how your reactive data works with React.
Was it in this? Was it in this page, or was it somewhere in the Meteor guide where Tom said, "Listen, guys, we all knew that React or Blaze 2 was going to be like a total rewrite that was going to like break your stuff." Tom Clemens.
Yeah, no, he definitely said that in here, but I don't think that's necessarily true either. There's been several aborted attempts to start up a Blaze 2 project, and I don't know. Like I feel like even if it was a total rewrite, that doesn't mean it's gonna like break everything, right? Spark to Blaze broke a lot of stuff, and it was painful, and we got through it, and that's fine. But I think switching to React under the covers, and you're telling me like it's not going to be in any way backwards compatible, like that's a lot more, I don't know, scary to me. And so I just started like after reading Sashko's post, I don't, I given what's happened with Velocity and given what's kind of happened with Blaze, where this is the first thing we're hearing about it, I don't believe anything that Meteor says when they say something's going to be 100% foolproof, right? Like they can't say that.
Well, a lot of people have been asking me this week, like what, or have asking us, like, where do we think the future of MDG is going to be? Like, what are they doing right now? There's some stuff happening.
Yeah.
And my response has been follow the money. Follow the money. Like, they need to get in the black.
Yeah.
And this Blaze 2 conversation, you could do the same thing. You know what MDG is putting at the top of their priority list right now is keeping their Galaxy customers happy.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the Galaxy users use Blaze. A huge percentage of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I would agree with that, right?
So this is going to play that. Those are the real, the opinions and the conversations that those clients give to MDG. That's going to really be what steers Blaze 2. So we could do like a bunch of conversation and talking now, but I think that's really what's going to happen. And unfortunately, that's like behind closed doors or private conversations. We don't really know.
Yeah. I'll give my prediction. They're going to shed any weight that they can shed and rely on the JavaScript community to do as much as they can without them having to write code to maintain that stuff.
So this is bigger than Blaze now, right?
It is. So the conversation
we're shifting. Yeah.
Yeah, the conversation here is definitely about Blaze, but I think it's the tip of the iceberg and the trend you're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we know that they've mentioned in the past, like they really like what Webpack has. David Greenspan wrote about that, and I think we talked about it on this podcast.
Did we? I think we did.
Yeah. There's a post out there. I don't know if we talked about it, though.
Yeah. Right.
But so Webpack, they brought React in, super simple. We know their talk about Blaze and Blaze 2 and React under the covers. And we know that they want to bring in better support for NPM. So all that says to me is exactly what you said, is that they're going to start shedding weight on the packages that MDG maintains, and they're going to focus on a great developer experience.
Yeah.
They're going to make a wrapper around all this cool tech that is maintained by a larger community and is not scoped specifically to an MDG stack.
Well,
they're going to bring it in, and they're going to have it be a happy path for developers from start, when you say Meteor create, all the way to deployment.
Right.
But you're going to be using Webpack. You're going to be using NPM packages instead of Atmosphere, my prediction.
Maybe we have some inside info. I don't know.
Well, so Atmosphere is going to be like, you can't pull the plug on that. You can't just be like, poop, off.
No, you can't.
No, you can't.
I think it'll die. I don't think it's
in 5 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's core to their business, and frankly, NPM's doing a good enough job. So I think that's fine. The single biggest problem that I had with this is the fact that as an early adopter, like to have, I feel like some of Sashko's responses of late have been a little flippant or off-putting to me because I just feel like, and I think I said this in one of my posts, like they're not really building apps with Meteor. And so it's not super painful for them to make these choices
Well,
other than they have to deal with some griping from us.
they brought Percolate in. They have their consulting arm now. And I know that when they fired up Galaxy, the first clients to Galaxy, they like gave them a bunch. And we had this conversation about Classcraft, where they came in and they went above and beyond to get these companies going on Galaxy. They looked at their code intimately, offered suggestions. So they have firsthand knowledge now of the largest apps being
ran. They do. But at the same time, they're not really, like, for them to just flippantly say, like, Velocity, it can die. Blaze can die. Like, React's around. You should just, suck it up and deal with it. Like, I feel like that's some of the response that we're getting from a couple of developers. And that's not the response you necessarily want to hear after you build a big business on Blaze or Velocity or any of that.
Follow the money. They want to make their clients happy. They're gonna do it. And if Sashko is coming across a little harsh, I would, and we're bros, but I'm playing the devil's advocate here. If Sashko comes across harsh, it's probably because he knows what's coming down the pipeline with Meteor, and he's super excited. And so these conversations about maintaining all this old code, he's like, oh, why is this coming up again? Come on, people. And we just don't know what he knows.
Right.
We're not excited about what he's excited about.
But that's like my son kind of getting an attitude with me when I ask him about his homework or something. Like, I don't know about your homework. I gave you the homework. Don't get an attitude with me.
That is a great analogy right there.
I'm just saying, like, clue us in. I mean, all of us here, at the end of the day, we're all trying to build businesses around using this framework. And, none of us likes to hear that we made a bad decision because we made that decision based on what they were giving us. Mm-hmm. So to hear that, switching to React is the way we should go, like that's a big deal for a lot of businesses that are already around.
That is. And it's even bigger deal for the companies that have built on top of Blaze and they have maybe $5 to $10 million in VC funding, and then going back to your investors, at your meetings, at your update meetings and saying, oh, we're going to have to rebuild this huge part. Like our whole client side is, and our templates are going to be, rebuilt in React.
Yeah.
So they have that in mind. They're having the painful conversations. They have to deal with that right now. I think they will. I think they have to.
Abigail kind of summed up my concerns nicely with a list of kind of questions that they should be asking. And ultimately, Evan Yu came back and addressed a lot of it as well. And I want to mention this because I do feel like, I'm trying to find it here. I do feel like they're listening in this thread and kind of processing everything that we're saying. And that's awesome. I like that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think initially, Evan's post sounded bad, but it's really going to be not as bad as it initially sounded.
I purposely stayed out of this whole conversation, this whole forum post, because I was going to get lost in the minutia of it all. Mm-hmm. And there was just so much, there's 175, little responses to read on this thing. And it's like, oh, I don't want to be notified in my email of all this.
Oh, here you go. Okay. I found it. So it's really hard to address every question in this thread. So I'll just do a generic Q&A here. And he just said, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Old Blaze will continue to work, and it should be totally possible to use both at the same time in a project. And I think that to me is awesome because that means we can incrementally upgrade and bite the bullet when it feels like, oh my gosh, this piece of our app is amazingly better. Then, you can kind of do that.
So Blaze 2 is not going to be a version update
No.
the Blaze templating package, it's going to be a whole nother package name.
Right.
Yep.
And it seems likely it'll be Inferno, thanks to Abigail. Everyone seems to be calling it that now, so in the thread. So you should go read. It's pretty funny. Um, and yeah, so they believe that,
I'm putting it out there. I think it should be called Blunt.
Blunt.
Yep. The Blaze is gone. You just got a Blunt left. And
You're terrible.
I do not do drugs. I don't advocate it.
Yeah, that's not even like the Blaze is gone. That's not what you call that. A Blunt is a different thing.
Well, maybe. Oh man, I don't
know. Terrible, Ben.
I'm trying to be funny on something I don't know anything about.
So yeah, I don't know. Where does he say Blaze in its current form doesn't work very well if we maintain 100% backwards compatibility. React checks a lot of boxes in terms of what we want to see in a better Blaze. This almost sounds like Matt wrote this. The same amount of effort and resources required to maintain a competing solution with feature parity and the same level. Mindshare is huge. It's probably not best for MDG. Gosh, there was something in here that I really liked, and now I can't remember. But here's the kicker, right? Like the single hardest problem I've dealt with recently with Crater is server-side rendering. Spiderable is horrible. And I don't have the image on this machine, but I've got an image where there's like 50 Phantom.js spun up. So I welcome better SSR because Google can single-handedly kill Crater if they want.
Yes.
So
yeah, and we just revamped OK Grow's website, and we built in React, and we used Flow Router SSR. And it was great. It was not like some crazy ordeal. It was a really nice router to work with, and pages load really fast. They really do. I was really impressed. Once it was live, I loaded it up on my mobile phone, and I was like, holy cow, what? So I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
No more Phantom.
Good.
You're done with the conversation. I am excited about, so the old people or the old apps, that's yet to be seen what your environment's going to be like, what your uphill battle is to upgrade. They have some sort of understanding. They have some big players that are paying them money that use this old stuff right now. So I don't think it's going to be very painful. What I really like to see is that we are going to be getting out of the meteor cultish mentality where like so much is built by MDG, so much is like nicely packaged together, and all our knowledge can't really go and apply to other technologies out in the world.
Right.
Now, Blaze is going to be gone. Atmosphere is going to be washing down. Velocity is going to be gone in adoption to more industry standard testing methods and test runners. We're going to have Webpack coming in. We're going to be depending more on NPM. We're going to be on React or Angular. And Meteor and what MDG's build is going to be this nice developer wrapper around all these technologies.
Right.
That is exciting.
It is exciting.
We are going to join this JavaScript train right into the future rather than having our own train on the side. We are now going to be part of the Node world more.
Well, yeah, and to a point, we had a conversation offline. I think something like Autoform is really hard to maintain, but in a React environment, maybe that's not so hard, right? Like I'm sure there's already components out there that help you work with forms.
Yeah,
and I think we can better leverage larger communities to our benefit, and that's really what that's about.
Yeah. And so I'm going to start getting plugged in more with other meetups around my area. If Meteor is going to become like a wrapper around these like other technologies, well then the real drive is these other technologies. So, and Meteor is just a nice, it's going to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit more important than the editor that you use, but it's going to be developer experience a wrapper. So.
Yeah. And I think there's one other key point here that Evan made that I also found interesting is that It's maintained by a dedicated team at Facebook, and it's used in production by many serious businesses. And those serious businesses, like, we're not talking
Instagram.
small. We're talking like Airbnb, we're talking Netflix, all kinds of businesses that are doing super interesting things in our society today. So that's not nothing.
Yeah. And that's the community we're joining. So people, it's time to get off the Blaze train. And be happy because you're about to get on I don't know. Who's that dude who made Tesla?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. You're about to get on his tube train.
His tube train. I don't think that's what that was called.
No, it's not. I'm totally drawing blanks here.
You're totally going to enter the channel. No. All right.
Time to go 800 miles an hour from LA to San Francisco.
This was a long episode. I'll just say thanks for sticking with us, guys. There was a lot of stuff we missed last week. So appreciate your tolerance on a longer show, but I think we had a lot to say. Hopefully, don't freak out, okay? No matter what, Blaze will stick around. I just think at some point it will become unsupported, and that sometime is probably not 1.3. Maybe it's well, I guess, we're talking 2.0, right?
Yeah, that's what we're talking.
Semantically versioned. If it was there in 1.0 and they drop support for it, then we're going to be looking at 2.0, and hopefully they get a little bit better about announcing when these things are coming out. I still think we've heard about their Blaze investigation. Let's hear about 1.3. What's going to be in there? Come on, Jeff. Cue that up for us.
Yeah. I think MDG is doing a great job.
Yeah.
At like a business plan on what the stack's going to look like in the future.
A business plan. Well, they're talking about what the stack's going to be in the future that is congruent with them making money as a business.
Well, I like it. I like it. I
do too. Because you can't have... Like, people complain, like, oh, they're too slow, they're not getting all this stuff out. Well, frankly, it might be a lot faster if they're not having to write every single line of code themselves.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. It is really going to be awesome. MDG and Meteor is going to be here to stay for a very long time. They're going to have developers be super happy working with what they have. But I guess what we're asking for is we want to hear more from Matt and Jeff.
Absolutely.
That's what we want. We love you guys so much.
That's what I think we've always asked for.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All
right, team.
Yeah, thanks for listening. This video has been a Meteor Club production. You can find out more information about Meteor Club and join the mailing list by clicking on the Meteor Club button below. If you enjoyed this video, you can also hit the subscribe button below and get more content like this. Thanks for watching.